This is VOA News. I'm Marissa Melton. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky attended a memorial service on Saturday to commemorate 7 senior Interior Ministry officials killed in a helicopter crash this week, along with another 7 people, including a child. Later in the day, Zelensky remembered his colleagues in his nightly video address, saying, "Every day we lose people whom we will always remember and regret that we cannot bring back." U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has paid a solemn visit to an island off Senegal that's one of the most recognized symbols of the horrors of the Atlantic slave trade that trapped tens of millions of Africans in bondage. She's in Senegal as part of a 10-day trip aimed at rebuilding economic relationships between the United States and Africa. On Saturday, she visited the Gorée Island building known as the House of Slaves and peered out of the so-called Door of No Return, from which enslaved people were shipped across the Atlantic.
Gorée and the transatlantic slave trade are not just a part of African history, they are a part of American history too. And we know that the tragedy did not stop with the generation of humans taken from here.
Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has fired the chief of the army in the wake of the January 8th far-right uprising in the capital, Brasilia. Lula has said several times in public that there were definitely people in the army who allowed supporters of former President Jair Bolsonaro to storm through government buildings and destroy public property in that incident. And Canada's foreign ministry says the government of Cameroon and some separatist factions have agreed to begin resolving a conflict that has killed more than 6,000 people. This is VOA News. Thousands of protesters took to the streets again in Peru's capital as they made clear they refuse to stop demonstrating until the country's president, Dina Boluarte, resigns. AP correspondent Karen Chamas.
Police fired volleys of tear gas after standing watch over protesters that had been blocked into the downtown streets of Lima. The demonstrators appeared to be more organized than the previous day, and they took over key roads in downtown Lima waving flags while chanting. Many of the protesters had arrived from remote Andean regions, where dozens have died amid unrest that has engulfed large portions of the country. In Arequipa, Peru's second city, police clashed with protesters that tried to storm the airport. The unrest began after Pedro Castillo, Peru's first leader from a rural Andean background, was impeached and imprisoned after he tried to dissolve Congress last month. I'm Karen Chamas.
In the United States, illegal border crossings surged last month, with December posting the largest number of President Joe Biden's term. AP correspondent Julie Walker.
Authorities say a surge in Cuban and Nicaraguan arrivals at the U.S. border with Mexico in December led to the highest number of illegal border crossings recorded during any month of Joe Biden's presidency. The extraordinary influx came shortly before Biden introduced measures on January 5th to deter Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans. Customs and Border Protection said Friday U.S. authorities stopped migrants more than 251,000 times along the Mexican border in December, up 7% from November and up 40% from December 2021. I'm Julie Walker.
At least 6 people were injured Saturday in 2 blasts in Jammu, the principal Indian city in a region disputed by neighboring Pakistan. This comes ahead of the arrival of Indian opposition leader Rahul Gandhi on a cross-country march. Police said the blasts hit Jammu's transport yard in the Narwal area. Security has been tightened ahead of Gandhi's arrival, which is expected on Monday. Iran's troubled currency fell to a record low against the U.S. dollar Saturday amid the country's increasing isolation and possible European Union sanctions against Tehran's Revolutionary Guards or some of its members. Ties between the EU and Tehran have deteriorated in recent months as efforts to revive nuclear talks have stalled. Hundreds of protesters gathered in front of the Swedish consulate in Istanbul and set a Swedish flag ablaze on Saturday. Riot police who took security measures around the consulate building had stopped protesters trying to damage the entrance of the building. From Washington, I'm Marissa Melton, VOA News.
Please subscribe, like, or comment. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Patrick. I'm an American. I grew up in the U.S. I am a professional English language educator with extensive experience in teaching English, especially English for academic purposes, test preparation, and general English to university students and adults of all levels from A1 to C2.